Hey everybody, how are y'all doing today on this mighty fine but lovely Saturday? Well, I am doing pretty good. It's a nice day outside, it's cloudy, and it's snowy outside, but yeah. So, what do you got planned for the rest of today? Well, my plan for the rest of today, other than eating dinner and gaming, is going to be doing some laundry. Especially as I need to get my laundry done. And I had a good dinner last night. Ended up making myself some vegetable stew. And it was delicious. Somehow it opened me up. And that's a good thing. Opened me up sinus wise. But yeah. Well, I'm receiving a package today. And it's a something from my Tahoe. And that is actually great to know. So, yeah. What a day yesterday was. And I'm not going to be live streaming as much as I was. Especially because I need to work some extra hours this upcoming week at work. But yeah. And yeah, we're going to be looking at a YouTube video. And of course, going to be using the Brave browser. Because I don't want to see no ads in the videos. What do y'all think? Alright. Sorry, I thought I heard something. But it's just probably outside of my unit. Just let me get it set up, of course. Alright. Now I'm just going to be getting my webcam. Just moving it to right there. And yeah. I'm just going to be turning my mic off. Just in case if anything happens. Alright. Alright. And let's watch this thing.
You think Christmas candy in the 1970s meant just chocolate bars and candy canes from the store? Think again. They're real candies that sat in fancy dishes on living room tables all across the country. Before big candy companies took over, making Christmas candy at home was what December was all about. Let's look at 25 Christmas candies from the 1970s that have almost completely disappeared. Treats that most people under 50 have never even heard of, let alone tasted. Penuche, the brown sugar fudge that separated serious candy makers from amateurs. Penuche was pure caramelized sophistication in a 2-inch square. This wasn't your chocolate fudge imposter. Across 1970s Midwest and New England kitchens, Penuche represented the pinnacle of holiday candy-making skill. The name came from Mexican panocha, meaning raw sugar, and it required absolute precision. Miss your temperature by 5 degrees, and you'd have grainy disaster or syrupy mess. You'd combine brown sugar, butter, milk, and salt in a heavy saucepan, stirring constantly until it reached exactly 238 degrees Fahrenheit. Softball stage. Then came the critical moment. Cooling undisturbed to 110 degrees Fahrenheit before beating with a wooden spoon until it lost its gloss. The smell of caramelizing brown sugar filled entire houses, rich and molasses dark. Pour it into buttered pans, score into squares, top each with a walnut half. This sat in places of honor at church bake sales. Making successful panuche meant you understood chemistry, patience, and tradition. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone under 50 who's even heard of it. A casualty of our instant gratification culture. Divinity. Floating in on clouds of egg-white magic, Divinity looked like snowdrifts and tasted like vanilla-scented heaven. This was the showstopper of every Christmas candy plate, gleaming white and impossibly light. Divinity had southern roots but spread nationwide by the 1970s. Here's the trick. You couldn't make it on rainy days. Humidity turned pristine white peaks into sticky, weeping messes. Smart candy makers checked weather forecasts first. The technique required 2 people and perfect timing. Boil sugar, corn syrup, and water to 260 degrees Fahrenheit, while simultaneously beating egg whites to stiff peaks. Then came the dramatic pour. Streaming boiling syrup into egg whites while beating constantly, the mixture transforming into glossy white clouds. Beat for 15 minutes until it held shape. Drop spoonfuls onto waxed paper, working fast before it set. Each piece got a pecan half pressed into its peak. The texture was unlike anything else. Crispy, chewy outside, melt in your mouth inside, sweet but not cloying. Divinity represented an era when women spent entire December days in kitchens, when candy making was performance art measured in hours, not minutes. Bourbon balls. Dark, boozy little spheres that made grown-ups giggle and kids curious. Bourbon balls were Christmas candy with a wink and a warning. This was the adults-only corner of the candy dish. Born in Kentucky's bourbon culture but adopted nationwide by the 1970s, these occupied a special place in holiday entertaining. They were sophisticated, slightly scandalous, and absolutely not for children. They appeared at cocktail parties, neighborhood exchanges, and on special plates that came out only after kids went to bed. Making them was blissfully simple. Crush an entire box of vanilla wafers into fine crumbs, mix with powdered sugar, cocoa powder, chopped pecans, corn syrup, and a generous pour of good Kentucky bourbon. The mixture became dark, fragrant dough that you'd roll into 1-inch balls and coat in more powdered sugar or chopped nuts. They needed at least a day to mellow in a tin. The first bite delivered intense cocoa, then crunchy pecans. Finally, that unmistakable bourbon warmth spreading across your tongue. They've disappeared largely because modern paranoia about alcohol in children has made them seem inappropriate. Chocolate peppermint creams. The candy that proved homemade could rival anything from fancy chocolatiers. Chocolate peppermint creams combined Christmas's signature flavor pairing in one elegant bite. These looked professional, tasted luxurious, and required surprising patience. Throughout the 1970s, these were the candies ambitious home cooks made to prove their skills. They showed up in decorative tins as hostess gifts, on holiday dinner dessert plates, and in special boxes for teachers and neighbors. You'd make a peppermint fondant center first, mixing powdered sugar with butter, cream, and peppermint extract until it formed a smooth dough. Roll it thin, cut into circles or squares, let them firm up overnight. The next day came the chocolate coating, melting semi-sweet chocolate with a bit of paraffin wax for shine, dipping each cream center with a fork, letting excess drip off, setting them on waxed paper to harden. The result was impressive. Dark chocolate shells giving way to cool. Peanut brittle. Thin, golden sheets of shattered candy studded with roasted peanuts. Peanut brittle was the candy that announced itself before you even saw it, crackling and snapping with every bite. This was edible amber, sweet and salty, and dangerous to fillings. In 1970s America, peanut brittle was serious business. Every family had their champion recipe, and arguments raged over whether to use raw or roasted peanuts, butter or margarine, light or dark corn syrup. Southern grandmothers especially guarded their techniques like state secrets. The process moved fast once you started. Boil sugar, corn syrup, water, and salt to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Hard crack stage, watching like a hawk because the line between perfect and burnt was seconds. Stir in peanuts and butter. Cook another minute, then pull from heat and add baking soda. The mixture foamed up dramatically, a chemical reaction that made the brittle light and porous. Pour it fast onto a buttered marble slab or baking sheet, spreading thin with a metal spatula before it set like glass. The sound was the glory, that sharp crack when you broke it into irregular shards. Each piece delivered intense caramelized sugar, roasted peanut crunch, and a slight bitterness that balanced the sweet perfectly. Opera creams. Pale pink, yellow, and white fondant centers wrapped in chocolate. Opera creams were the fancy candies that appeared in decorative boxes.
Sorry, I had to check that the sound was on for the browser. Sorry about that.
From local candy shops every Christmas. These were the candies you didn't make at home. You bought them from the good confectioner downtown. Opera creams had an old-fashioned elegance that fit perfectly with 1970s holiday formality. They came in traditional flavors: vanilla, strawberry, lemon, maple, and occasionally orange or cherry. Each piece was identical in size, professionally dipped in chocolate, some topped with a candied violet or a delicate piped decoration. The texture made them special. The chocolate shell gave way to incredibly smooth, creamy fondant that melted almost instantly on your tongue. They weren't chewy or crunchy. They were pure dissolution, flavor without much substance. The sweetness was intense but clean, without graininess or artificial aftertaste. These candies represented a certain kind of middle-class aspiration. You bought opera creams for important people: your boss, the minister, your child's teacher. They came in gold boxes with ribbon, suitable for formal occasions. Today, they've disappeared along with the small candy shops that made them, replaced by mass-produced truffles that can't match their delicate refinement. Coconut bonbons. Little snowballs of shredded coconut bound with sweetened condensed milk and rolled in powdered sugar. Coconut bonbons were the candies that kids could actually help make without ruining them. These were forgiving, fun, and coconut-forward in ways modern candy rarely achieves. Throughout the 1970s, coconut bonbons appeared at every church Christmas bazaar, school bake sale, and neighborhood cookie exchange. They were budget-friendly candy that looked impressive, requiring just 3 ingredients and no cooking. Mothers made them with daughters, teaching candy-making basics without the pressure of temperamental sugar syrups. Mix 1 package of sweetened flaked coconut with half a can of sweetened condensed milk until it formed a sticky dough. Add a splash of vanilla extract, maybe some almond extract for sophistication. Roll the mixture into 1-inch balls, coat them in powdered sugar, set them on waxed paper to firm up. Some versions got a maraschino cherry pushed into the center. Others were dipped in melted chocolate for upgrade. The texture was moist and chewy, intensely coconut, sweet enough to make your teeth ache, but somehow still compelling. They were the candy that converted coconut skeptics, proving that cheap ingredients handled right could create something genuinely delicious and festive. Chocolate fudge. Rich, dense, impossibly smooth chocolate fudge was the foundation of every 1970s Christmas candy plate. This wasn't just candy. It was a family tradition passed down through generations, with each grandmother claiming her recipe was superior to all others. Fudge making in the 70s was a December ritual taken as seriously as tree decorating. Women gathered in kitchens, comparing techniques, sharing secrets about whether to use evaporated milk or heavy cream, arguing about the virtues of marshmallow cream versus traditional methods. Perfect fudge had a glossy surface, cut cleanly without crumbling, and melted creamily on the tongue without any graininess. The traditional method required vigilance. Combine sugar, cocoa powder, butter, and milk in a heavy saucepan, stirring constantly to prevent scorching. Bring it to exactly 234 degrees Fahrenheit. Softball stage. Testing by dropping a bit into cold water. Remove from heat. Add vanilla. Then the critical step. Beat it with a wooden spoon until it lost its gloss and thickened, usually about 10 minutes of arm-burning work. Pour into a buttered pan, let it set, cut into perfect squares. The first bite was pure chocolate luxury. Creamy, intense, not too sweet, with a faint graininess that meant it was real homemade fudge, not that smooth, store-bought imposter. Seafoam, pale green or ivory candy with a texture somewhere between divinity and honeycomb toffee. Seafoam was the mysterious confection that confused everyone who tried it. Despite the name and sometimes the color, it tasted nothing like the ocean and everything like brown sugar heaven. Seafoam appeared in 1970s candy dishes looking delicate and ethereal, its light color and airy texture making it seem less indulgent than dark chocolate fudge. The name came from its foamy appearance, created by the chemical reaction between hot sugar syrup and egg whites. Some versions included a touch of green food coloring to emphasize the oceanic theme. Make it like divinity's cousin. Boil brown sugar, white sugar, corn syrup, and water to 260 degrees Fahrenheit while beating egg whites to stiff peaks. Pour the syrup into the egg whites while beating. Add vanilla and a pinch of salt. Beat until thick enough to hold shape. Drop spoonfuls onto waxed paper, top with pecans or chocolate chips. The texture was seafoam's glory. Crispy shell giving way to a light, almost dissolving interior with rich caramel flavor from the brown sugar. It was sweeter than divinity, but less cloying than pure white sugar candy. Modern candy aisles have nothing comparable to this delicate, old-fashioned confection. Pralines. Creamy, pecan-studded discs that melted on your tongue. Pralines were New Orleans' gift to American Christmas candy, spreading from Louisiana northward through church cookbooks and women's magazines. These weren't the hard European pralines. They were soft, buttery, barely holding their shape. In the 1970s, pralines represented Southern sophistication. They showed up at holiday parties, packed in decorative tins for gifts, sold at fundraisers where women competed to make the creamiest batch. The texture was everything. Too hard meant you'd failed. Too soft meant they'd stick together. But perfect pralines had that barely set quality that dissolved into caramel heaven. You'd combine brown sugar, white sugar, heavy cream, and butter in a heavy saucepan, stirring until it reached 236 degrees Fahrenheit. Remove from heat, add whole pecan halves and vanilla, then beat until it started to thicken and lose its gloss. The critical moment when you had maybe 2 minutes to drop spoonfuls onto waxed paper before the mixture set completely. The flavor was pure caramelized bliss. Buttery, brown sugar richness with crunchy soft pecans throughout. They were candy that required southern humidity to achieve properly. Northern kitchens struggled to replicate that perfect creamy texture that made authentic pralines unforgettable. Molasses taffy. Dark, glossy ropes of pulled candy that turned golden brown as you worked them. Molasses taffy was the candy that required muscle, patience, and usually a friend to help. This was old-fashioned candy making as physical labor and entertainment combined. Molasses taffy had colonial American roots, but remained popular through the 1970s in traditional households. Taffy pulls were social events, especially before Christmas, when families gathered to make candy together. The process was the point. working the candy until your arms ached, laughing at butter-slicked hands, racing to twist and cut before it hardened completely. Boil molasses, sugar, butter, vinegar, and water to 265 degrees Fahrenheit. Pour onto a buttered marble slab or large platter. Let it cool until you could handle it. Butter your hands heavily. Gather up the dark mass and start pulling, stretching it out and folding it back on itself over and over for 15 to 20 minutes. The candy gradually lightened from almost black to amber. Caramels. Individual squares of butter-rich, vanilla-scented caramel wrapped in waxed paper. Homemade caramels were the candy that serious cooks made to showcase their skill with sugar. These weren't those cheap cellophane-wrapped candies from the store. These were luxury confections that took time, attention, and good ingredients. In 1970s suburbia, homemade caramels represented culinary ambition. They appeared in decorative tins at holiday parties, wrapped in colorful twists of waxed paper, each piece a small treasure. Making them required confidence with high-temperature sugar work and the patience to stir constantly for 30 minutes or more. Combine sugar, corn syrup, butter, and heavy cream in a heavy saucepan. Cook over medium heat, stirring constantly to prevent scorching, until the mixture reached 248 degrees Fahrenheit, firm ball stage. The stirring was critical. Stop even for a minute and you'd have burnt caramel. Add vanilla at the end. Pour into a buttered pan. Let it set overnight. Cut into squares with a buttered knife. Wrap each piece individually. The texture was the achievement. Soft enough to yield to your teeth, but firm enough to hold shape. Creamy throughout, dissolving slowly with intense butter and vanilla flavor. They were candy that proved someone had spent real time and effort on you, making them precious gifts. Butterscotch drops. Hard, amber-colored discs that glowed like jewels when held to light. Butterscotch drops were the candy that simmered on stovetops for what felt like hours, filling houses with the unmistakable aroma of caramelizing brown sugar and butter. These weren't soft caramels. They were hard candy that dissolved slowly, releasing waves of buttery sweetness. Butterscotch drops occupied a special place in 1970s Christmas candy making because they seemed both simple and mysterious. The ingredient list was short: butter, brown sugar, corn syrup, vinegar. But achieving that perfect hard crack consistency and that distinctive butterscotch flavor required understanding how sugar behaves at high temperatures. You'd melt butter in a heavy saucepan, add brown sugar and corn syrup, stir until dissolved, then let it boil without stirring until it reached 300 degrees Fahrenheit. A few drops of vinegar kept the sugar from crystallizing. The mixture turned deep amber, smelling like toffee and burnt sugar. Pour it carefully by spoonfuls onto buttered baking sheets, working quickly before it set into glass-hard puddles. Each drop was a tiny artwork, irregular edges, varying thickness, sometimes with darker brown swirls where the sugar caramelized more intensely. They dissolved slowly on your tongue, pure butterscotch essence without chocolate or other flavors to complicate it. Modern candy rarely achieves this level of butter-forward purity. Toffee. Brittle, butter-rich candy topped with chocolate and crushed almonds. Toffee was the sophisticated cousin of peanut brittle, requiring more butter, more attention, and more patience. This was candy that could break teeth if made wrong, but melted luxuriously if made right. English toffee, as it was often called in the 1970s, represented upscale homemade candy. It appeared in decorative tins lined with waxed paper, broken into irregular shards that looked rustic but tasted refined. The combination of buttery toffee, dark chocolate, and toasted almonds created something greater than its parts. Cook butter and sugar together, stirring constantly, watching as it gradually darkened from pale yellow to deep amber. The butter could separate if you weren't careful, requiring constant stirring to keep it emulsified. Heat it to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Add toasted almonds. Pour quickly onto a buttered sheet pan. Spread thin. While still warm, spread melted chocolate over the top. Sprinkle with more finely chopped almonds. Once set, break it into pieces. The crunch was explosive, shattering under your teeth, the butter-rich toffee dissolving quickly, chocolate melting, almond pieces providing additional crunch. The flavor was complex. Caramelized butter, slightly bitter chocolate, nutty almonds. This was adult candy, less sweet than most Christmas confections, appreciated by sophisticated palates. Nougat. Chewy, white candy studded with pistachios, almonds, and candied cherries. Homemade nougat was the ambitious project that separated casual candy makers from dedicated confectioners. This was the candy inside fancy candy bars, except homemade versions tasted infinitely better. Making nougat at home was rare even in the 1970s because it required specialized equipment and precise technique. But dedicated candy makers took it on as a Christmas challenge, producing batches that rivaled anything from commercial candy factories. The process involved multiple steps, careful temperature control, and usually an assistant. You'd need 2 sugar syrups cooked to different temperatures, one to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, another to 320 degrees Fahrenheit, plus beaten egg whites and honey. Combine them while beating constantly. Add butter and vanilla. Fold in toasted nuts and chopped candied fruit. The mixture stayed warm and pliable for only minutes, requiring quick work to press it into a pan lined with edible rice paper. The texture was uniquely chewy without being sticky, firm enough to bite through, but soft enough to yield, with bursts of nut crunch and sweet tart fruit throughout. The flavor was honey-sweet, vanilla-scented, with the nuts providing savory contrast. Homemade nougat was a Christmas miracle, proof that with enough skill and determination, home cooks could create commercial-quality candy. Peppermint bark. Layers of dark and white chocolate topped with crushed candy canes. Peppermint bark was the sleek, modern-looking candy that bridged homemade tradition and contemporary aesthetics. This was easy enough for beginners, but impressive enough to gift to anyone. Peppermint bark emerged as a Christmas candy sensation in the late 1960s and exploded in popularity through the 1970s. It appeared at every holiday party, packed in cellophane bags tied with ribbon, arranged on serving platters where its red and white Christmas colors needed no additional decoration. The combination of chocolate and peppermint was traditional, but the bark format felt fresh and current. Melt dark or semi-sweet chocolate, spread it thin on a parchment-lined baking sheet, let it set completely. Melt white chocolate, add a few drops of peppermint extract, spread it over the dark chocolate layer. Immediately sprinkle crushed candy canes over the top, pressing them gently into the white chocolate. Let it set completely, then break into irregular pieces. The contrast was the appeal. Dark chocolate's bitter depth against white chocolate's creamy sweetness. Smooth chocolate against crunchy peppermint shards. Warm chocolate flavor against cool mint. Each bite delivered textural and flavor complexity that seemed sophisticated despite the simple preparation. It's one of the few 70s candies that survived into modern times. Cherry cordials. Dark chocolate shells filled with liquid cherry syrup surrounding a whole maraschino cherry. Cherry cordials were the candies that seemed magical, almost impossible to make at home. How did that liquid get inside the solid chocolate shell? Cherry cordials had an old-world elegance that fit perfectly with 1970s formal holiday entertaining. They appeared in special boxes from fine candy shops, each piece nestled in its own paper cup, the boxes lined with gold foil. These were luxury candies, saved for special occasions, offered to important guests. The secret to homemade cherry cordials was fondant. You'd make a firm fondant dough, flatten it into circles, wrap each around a maraschino cherry, let them sit overnight. The cherry juice slowly dissolved the fondant, creating that liquid center. Then came chocolate tempering, melting chocolate to specific temperatures to achieve snap and shine, dipping each fondant-wrapped cherry, setting them on waxed paper to harden. The first bite was dramatic, chocolate shell shattering, releasing a flood of sweet cherry liquid that mixed with the chocolate, the cherry itself providing a fruity, slightly artificial but deeply nostalgic finish. They were candy theater, each piece a small production of flavor and texture that took days to create and seconds to devour. Marzipan fruits. Tiny, hand-painted fruits and vegetables made from almond paste. Marzipan was the artistic candy that turned confectionery into sculpture. These weren't just sweets. They were edible decorations that looked almost too beautiful to eat. Marzipan had European origins, but became popular in the 1970s America through gourmet food magazines and specialty candy shops. Making marzipan fruits at home was a Christmas project for patient, artistic cooks who enjoyed detailed handwork. The candies appeared arranged on special plates, looking like miniature still-life paintings. You'd make marzipan from finely ground almonds, powdered sugar, and egg whites, kneading it into smooth, pliable paste. Divide it into portions, tint each with food coloring, red for apples and strawberries, yellow for bananas, orange for oranges, green for pears. Hand mold each piece into realistic fruit shapes, using cloves for stems, adding details with toothpicks and small brushes dipped in food coloring. The flavor was intensely almond, sweet, slightly bitter, with a smooth texture that dissolved slowly. Eating marzipan fruits felt almost wrong, like destroying art. They represented a time when food presentation mattered enormously, when holidays called for extra effort and beauty, when candy could be both delicious and decorative, satisfying multiple senses simultaneously. Turkish Delight. Soft, jellied cubes dusted with powdered sugar, flavored with rose water or citrus. Turkish Delight was the exotic candy that most Americans had heard of, but few had actually tasted. This was C.S. Lewis's candy from Narnia, mysterious and foreign. Turkish Delight appeared in the 1970s specialty shops and adventurous home kitchens as Americans developed interest in international foods. It required unfamiliar ingredients, rose water, orange blossom water, sometimes mastic, and an unusual cooking technique involving cornstarch suspension. Making it felt like culinary adventure. Combine sugar, water, and lemon juice, bring to boil. Separately, mix cornstarch with cold water into slurry. Add it to the boiling sugar syrup, stirring constantly as it thickened into translucent gel. Add your flavoring. Rose water for traditional, lemon or orange extract for variation, plus food coloring if desired. Pour into a pan dusted with cornstarch and powdered sugar. Let it set overnight. Cut into cubes. Toss in more powdered sugar. The texture confused American palates used to chocolate and caramel. Soft and bouncy, almost gummy but smoother, dissolving into intense floral sweetness. The rose water flavor was polarizing. People either loved its perfumed elegance or found it soapy. It represented cosmopolitan sophistication, a window into Middle Eastern confectionery traditions that felt exotic and refined. Fondant. Smooth, creamy, white candy base that became the centers of countless other confections. Fondant was the unsung hero of 1970s candy making, rarely eaten plain, but essential to dozens of recipes. This was the candy maker's clay, moldable and versatile. Fondant making was fundamental candy education. Women's magazines published recipes. Mothers taught daughters. Church cookbook committees included multiple versions. It was the gateway to more complex candy projects because once you mastered fondant, you could make cream centers, coat them in chocolate, and create professional-looking confections at home. Combine sugar, water, and cream of tartar. Cook to 238 degrees Fahrenheit without stirring. Pour onto a marble slab or large platter. Let it cool to lukewarm. Then work it with a spatula or wooden paddle, scraping and folding constantly as it transformed from clear syrup to opaque white cream. The moment it turned was obvious. Suddenly it was thick, smooth, no longer sticky. Knead it like dough. Wrap in plastic. Let it age overnight. The flavor was pure sweetness with a hint of vanilla, the texture impossibly smooth. You could flavor fondant portions differently: peppermint, maple, strawberry, lemon. Knead in food coloring. Shape it into patties or balls. It was practical magic. Sugar transformed into workable medium that enabled endless candy creativity. Lemon sugar cookies. Do you remember the tangy, mouth-watering taste of lemon cookies from your grandma's kitchen? These zesty little treats were a hit in the 1970s, adding a refreshing citrus twist to the usual lineup of sweet, sugary snacks. Made with real lemon juice and zest, they had that perfect balance of sweet and tart that kept you coming back for more. The texture was soft and chewy on the inside, with just a hint of crispness around the edges. And let's not forget that simple glaze made of powdered sugar mixed with fresh lemon juice that drizzled over the top, making each bite a tangy sweet explosion. They were the kind of cookies that felt like a burst of sunshine on your plate, brightening up any occasion, whether it was a family picnic, a bake sale, or just an after-school snack. Lemon cookies were a favorite for grandmas because they were easy to make, and kids loved them because, well, who could resist that lemony goodness? Lemon cookies deliver a refreshing, zesty kick, brightening any dessert spread. Gingerbread cookies. Gingerbread cookies have a timeless charm, one that brings memories flooding back every time the spicy sweet aroma fills the house. These cookies are quintessentially tied to Christmas, and decorating them was always one of my favorite holiday traditions. Grandma would bake the cookies into perfect little gingerbread men, hearts, and stars, and then set up a decorating station with icing, sprinkles, and candy to bring the gingerbread shapes to life. The history of gingerbread goes back centuries, with recipes originating from ancient Greece and Egypt, where it was used for ceremonial purposes. But it was in Europe during the Middle Ages that the first spiced gingerbread recipes began to take shape, with the combination of ginger, cinnamon, and cloves. By the 16th century, it had evolved into the beloved holiday treat we know today. Grandma's gingerbread cookies had that perfect balance of spice and sweetness, and decorating them with the family always felt like the start of the holiday season. The fun wasn't just in making the cookies, but
I will say this right here and right now. I've actually never made that type of cookie. However, I made a whole bunch of cookies with my grandma back in the day. Oh, how I miss doing that. The Christmas baking was our holiday tradition ever since I was just a wee boy. Up until 2010, 2011. But otherwise, yeah. I actually do miss that holiday holiday baking. Well, it is December. Maybe I should get back into doing that. Especially to restart a holiday tradition. Even though it's gonna cost money. But yeah. Returning to the video.
in how each of us could express ourselves through icing and candies. Hermit cookies. Hermit cookies are one of those nostalgic treats that aren't seen as much today, but once upon a time they were a favorite in many households. These chewy, spiced cookies are filled with raisins, dates, and nuts, creating a texture that's both hearty and comforting. What I love about Hermit cookies is their versatility and their depth of flavor. The blend of cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves creates a warm, spiced base that pairs perfectly with the chewy fruit and crunchy nuts. Grandma's Hermit cookies always had that homemade feel, dense, flavorful, and perfect for an afternoon snack. Whether enjoyed with a cup of tea or as a simple dessert, these cookies were a comforting part of our family gatherings. Their hearty texture and rich flavor made them the perfect cookie for colder months, and the warm spices brought a sense of comfort that made them a true holiday treat. Black and white cookies. Black and white cookies are a delightful treat that perfectly embodies the charm of Grandma's baking from the 1970s. These iconic cookies, also known as half moons, offer the ideal blend of soft, cake-like texture and rich frosting, making them a favorite at family gatherings and dessert tables. With their unique combination of chocolate and vanilla icing, they appeal to both chocolate lovers and those with a sweet tooth for classic flavors. What makes black and white cookies truly special is their simplicity and versatility. Made with a basic cake batter, these cookies are thick and round, often measuring about the size of your palm. Once baked, they are generously topped with a luscious layer of chocolate icing on one half and a sweet vanilla glaze on the other. The result is a stunning visual contrast that is just as delightful to eat as it is to look at. Grandma loved whipping up these cookies because they were perfect for any occasion. Whether it was a holiday celebration or just a Sunday afternoon treat, the satisfaction of biting into a soft cookie with the contrasting flavors of chocolate and vanilla melting in your mouth was nothing short of bliss. Icebox cookies. Icebox cookies were a game changer in our house, especially when holiday baking started to feel like an endless task. These cookies gave us the freedom to prepare ahead of time and then bake fresh whenever we needed them. The concept was simple yet brilliant. Mix the dough, refrigerate or freeze it, and then slice it into rounds whenever the craving or guests arrived. It was a convenience that couldn't be beat, especially with our busy holiday schedules. Grandma always had an assortment of icebox cookies in the fridge, ready to bake at a moment's notice. The beauty of these cookies was in their versatility. There were endless ways to customize the dough. Sometimes she'd add chocolate chips, nuts, or dried fruit, while other times she'd roll the dough in colorful sprinkles or cinnamon sugar. No matter how they were made, icebox cookies always had that satisfying crunch and buttery flavor that made them a favorite. The process of slicing and baking each round, then watching it crisp up to golden perfection, never got old. For me, icebox cookies represented the sweet spot between tradition and practicality. They brought the joy of homemade cookies without the hassle of last-minute baking chaos. Molasses cookies. Molasses cookies are a true comfort food, capturing the rich, earthy sweetness of molasses that has been cherished in American kitchens for generations. These cookies are soft, chewy, and deeply flavorful, often spiced with ginger, cinnamon, and cloves, creating a warm and inviting aroma as they bake. Grandma's molasses cookies were a holiday staple, their dark, rich color and fragrant spices filling the kitchen with a cozy, nostalgic scent that lingered long after baking. Biting into one of these cookies was like a hug in dessert form. The outside had a delicate sugar coating, offering a slight crunch, while the inside was soft and tender, melting in your mouth with each bite. The unique flavor of molasses adds a depth that sets these cookies apart from other sweets, and the spices bring a comforting warmth that makes each cookie feel like a taste of home. Grandma loved making these cookies for us, often rolling the dough in sugar to give them that extra sparkle. And it was always a treat to watch them puff up in the oven, knowing the delicious snack that awaited. Lady fingers. Lady fingers, or sardi as they are known in Italy, are light, airy cookies that have been a part of European dessert culture for centuries. These finger-shaped cookies were originally created in the 15th century for the royal court of Savoy, and they've been used in all sorts of desserts, including tiramisu and trifle ever since. Lady fingers are unique in that they are baked until crisp, but when used in desserts, they soften and take on a sponge-like texture. This delightful transformation allows them to absorb flavors and moisture, making them an essential ingredient in many creamy desserts. Grandma would often serve lady fingers alongside a cup of tea or use them as a base for more elaborate desserts, showcasing her creativity and love for baking. Though they may seem fancy, lady fingers are actually quite simple to make, and their versatility makes them a favorite for bakers of all skill levels. Whether used to create layered desserts or enjoyed on their own, these cookies remind us that elegance can come from simplicity. You think Christmas parties in the 60s and 70s were all about deviled eggs and crackers? Think again. These Mad Men-era holiday gatherings served up some of the most ambitious, theatrical, and downright bizarre appetizers in American culinary history.
So, yeah. I really gotta get back into baking. So, so what's on everybody's mind? Well, I just wanted to stream for a little bit. But, yeah. Don't forget to follow. And, yeah. Have a good day now. Peace.